Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between towering mountains, there lived a young man named Elias. The village was poor, and life was hard. The winters were cruel, the summers were short, and food was often scarce. But the people endured, generation after generation, because they had no other choice. Elias, however, was different. He was not content with mere survival. He wanted more, not riches or power, but strength of mind. He wanted to develop an ironclad mindset, one that would allow him to face any hardship without breaking. One evening, as Elias sat by the fire, his grandfather noticed the restless look in his eyes. The old man had seen many winters and carried the wisdom of his years. He leaned forward and said, "Elias, if you seek strength, you must first understand what it means to be strong. Strength is not just in the body, it is in the mind. And to forge an ironclad mind, you must train it like a blacksmith tempers steel." Elias listened closely. His grandfather continued, "There is a hermit who lives in the caves beyond the northern ridge. They say he was once a great warrior, but he gave up his sword to seek a deeper kind of strength. If you truly wish to learn, seek him out. Eke him out." The next morning, Elias packed a small bag with bread and a water skin and set off toward the northern ridge. The path was steep and treacherous, but he pressed on. After days of climbing, he reached the mouth of a dark cave. Inside, sitting cross-legged on a stone, was the hermit. His eyes were closed, but as Elias approached, he spoke without opening them. "Why have you come?" Elias knelt before him. "I wish to develop an ironclad mindset. I want to be unshaken by hardship." The hermit opened his eyes. They were calm, like still water. An ironclad mind is not built in a day. It is forged through discipline, patience, and relentless practice. Are you ready to endure the training? Elias nodded. "Then your first lesson begins now," the hermit said. "Sit with me in silence. Do not move, no matter what discomfort you feel. Observe your thoughts, but do not let them control you." Hours passed. Elias' legs ached. His back stiffened and his mind raced with restless thoughts. He wanted to shift, to stand, to speak. But he remembered the hermit's words. He stayed. When the sun had set, the hermit finally spoke. "You have done well, but this is only the beginning. Tomorrow you will face a greater challenge." The next morning the hermit led Elias to a rocky cliff. Below, a shallow but fast-moving river rushed over jagged stones. "You will stand in that river," the hermit said. "The water is cold, the current is strong, and the rocks will cut your feet. But you must remain still." Elias hesitated, but he stepped into the river. The cold shocked his body. The current pulled at his legs. The rocks spit into his soles. Pain shot through him, but he clenched his jaw and stood firm. Minutes felt like hours. The hermit watched from the shore, saying nothing. When Elias finally stumbled out, his feet were bleeding, and his body trembled from the cold. The hermit handed him a cloth. "Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. You controlled your mind today. That is strength." Days turned into weeks. Each morning the hermit gave Elias a new test. Sometimes it was fasting for an entire day, sitting in the scorching sun, or carrying heavy stones up the mountain. Other times it was simply sitting in stillness, observing his own thoughts without reacting. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the hermit asked, "What have you learned?" Elias thought carefully. "I have learned that discomfort is not my enemy, it is my teacher. I have learned that my mind is stronger than I ever believed." How does this make my mindset ironclad? How does this... The hermit smiled. An ironclad mindset is not about never feeling pain or doubt. It is about facing them and choosing not to be ruled by them. The body feels, but the mind decides. Most people are slaves to their impulses. They run from discomfort. They run from discomfort. They chase pleasure. They break under pressure. But you have trained. Elias nodded. He was beginning to understand. The hermit continued. Now, you must take these lessons into the world. Strength is not proven in isolation. It is proven in action. Return to your village and face life's challenges with the same discipline you have shown here. Elias returned home a changed man. When the winter came and food ran low, he did not complain. When others grew fearful, he remained calm. When hardship struck, he met it with steady resolve. Over time, the villagers noticed. They began to come to him for advice for strength. Years later, when Elias himself had grown old, a young man approached him, much like he had once approached the hermit. "How did you become so strong?" the young man asked. Elias smiled and told him the story of the cave, the river, and the hermit's lessons. Then he said, "An ironclad mindset is not a gift. It is a choice. It is the daily practice of mastering your thoughts, enduring discomfort, and refusing to be ruled by fear. Start small. Be patient. And remember, iron is forged in fire, and so is the mind." The young man listened, and in his eyes, Elias saw the same spark that had once burned in his own. The cycle would continue, for the path to an ironclad mindset was not a secret. It was a practice, a way of life, available to anyone willing to endure, to persist, and to choose strength over surrender. And so, the legacy of the ironclad mind lived on,